All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. Today, me and Nick here are going to be doing an April 7th round mock draft for the Los Angeles Rams. This is a team that has an early selection via the trade with the Falcons from last year. And I think the need is quite clear for the Rams here because they went and did some damage this offseason in free agency. And of course, with a trade to acquire Trent McDuffie, which they used their other first round pick on. So now corner is no longer really a need for them because they got McDuffie and Jalen Watson, both guys from the Chiefs. I think for the Rams, Nick, wide receiver is going to be the selection, either that or Kenyon Sadiq maybe at tight end. I think with the Rams, you look at a team that obviously has Puka Nakua. Devontae Adams, though, was in the final year of his deal. After that, they don't really have a whole lot of guys you're going to look to potentially step up long term at wide receiver. So that's where I think Mekhi Lemon or maybe somebody else like a Jordan Tyson will slot in at this selection when it's all said and done. Lemon, though, won the Blitnikoff Award as the nation's top wide receiver. He has just an overall knack for being a go to playmaker, has strong hands, elite focus, top tier nuances in body control and locating the football. This guy was just such a great player for USC for a handful of seasons. Some negatives on him, of course. He's not exactly a burner vertically, has a bit of a slower first step, not the strongest accelerator. Defeating press consistently could be difficult, but he's going to work out of the slot a good bit. I think this makes a lot of sense, Nick, for the Rams to turn to the receiving group for the future. Matt Stafford's probably going to be his final season, so whoever you're going to bring in at quarterback, they're going to need a large acumen of weapons. Stafford can make anything happen of anybody at wide receiver, right? That's a luxury that you're not going to have probably with your next guy. So we're going to have to continue to beef up this group. And again, with Adams entering his final year, and he's getting up there in age as well, you have to turn to the draft, and I think this is a great year for them to get a wide receiver, especially if this roster being in such good standing that allows them to potentially focus on positions right now that aren't as big of a concern, and that's going to allow them to have a strong roster continuously like they have always had under Les Snead. So I think this makes a lot of sense, Nick, and people don't seem to be talking about it enough, and I think pass catcher's a lock.
I think pass catching makes a ton of sense for this team. This is a Rams team that many people consider to be the second best team in the NFL last year, right behind the Seahawks. A lot of people felt the NFC title game was the true Super Bowl, defining game, and that whichever team won that, the Rams or the Seahawks would go on to beat the Patriots. We saw what the Seahawks did to the Patriots. I think you can take a pretty good guess that the Rams would have beat the Patriots as well. Obviously, we don't know because the game wasn't played, but I think the Rams were in a very good spot last year. They were a team that I thought had a phenomenal roster. They still have a phenomenal roster, and they had two glaring weaknesses last year, and then, well, a third weakness as well, in my opinion. They were weak at corner. They were kind of weak at wide receiver depth, and they don't have a backup or third string quarterback and an option after Matthew Stafford ultimately retires. I thought they were going to use their later first round pick on potentially Ty Simpson from Alabama, but they ended up trading that pick for McDuffie to kind of cancel out one of the needs that they did have. So that was some smart moves there. McDuffie is one of my favorite players in the NFL, so I love that trade. Right here, I think this is too high, obviously, take a quarterback. And Mekhi Lemon's a player that is a very intriguing prospect, right? Nearly 1,200 yards receiving last year, 11 touchdowns, about 15 yards per grab. He was really good for USC. He's got really good speed. He's really a versatile player, 5'11", 195. Certainly lacks some of that, high level athleticism that you want in the NFL, but he's got high football IQ, really competitive toughness, and I think he is a clear, really good slot receiver that can do a lot for you. The speed on him is absolutely phenomenal. And he can have some return value as well early on in his career, which I think could be an underrated aspect for the Rams here. This is a team that is pretty spoiled, right? They have a really stacked roster, obviously, considering they're one of the top contenders in the NFL. So they can really do a lot with these sort of early picks that they have. They only have three in the top 200, but they can still do something with those picks. I think Mekhi Lemon would be a very interesting prospect to add. Add a nice weapon to Matthew Stafford, as this is a team looking to run for a Super Bowl here.
Moving to the second round, linebacker maybe is the second biggest need that they have. I thought they got good play last year to Nate Landman and Omar Spates, guys that aren't getting paid a whole lot. And if they keep playing like that, eventually they're going to command some pretty solid money when it comes to an extension. This is a group I think that definitely could use some nice depth as well, though. Josiah Trotter fits the bill. This is a guy who's an instinctive run defender for Missouri, takes on blocks with authority, pretty sure-handed wrap-up tackler, has pretty good speed and closing ability. He definitely needs to improve his awareness and coverage. Can bite on play action fakes pretty hard, and he was limited often only being a two-down player because his coverage skills and IQ need to just again see some improvement. He could also use some more strength added to his frame as well. And this makes a lot of sense, Nick. A guy that's going to come in and make an impact and improve while not being thrust into action as a full time heavy lifter. they can use him as a two-down player, right? As he really starts to learn the gripes of the NFL. So I think this makes a lot of sense for a multitude of reasons that I just listed. And Trotter in round two is going to be around.
I think Trotter would be a really solid pick here. This is a guy that, again, you're not going to play three downs out of him. He's certainly got some durability concerns, but I think he's a player that's really solid overall. Good balance between run defense and coverage snaps last year. Played about 450 snaps in the box for the Missouri Tigers. Had 58 total tackles, 23 of those were assisted. Only missed 10 tackles last year. Definitely a number that maybe he wants to cut down on, but I think he's a prospect that's very intriguing at 6'2", 240. Very physical, right? Really solid. He can certainly needs to improve in coverage, and that's certainly something you'd be concerned about. But he's a hard hitter. He's really solid, pretty clean tackler. And overall, I thought he was really solid last year for Missouri. And again, this is a Rams team that can do a lot here. They have a lot of flexibility. This is a linebacker room that has some interesting prospects in it and interesting younger pieces. But I think they need to add a little bit more depth here. And getting a guy in Trotter who's a project player, somebody you can certainly work on his coverage scheme, could do a lot for this team. I think that'd be a really solid asset to add in the second round.
Now looking at round three, Jake Slaughter at center. Coleman Shelton's been a pretty respectable player for this team, but he's going to be 31 years old at the conclusion of this contract, so they could still keep him around. But I think long term, it's going to be a younger cat, and this is a pretty good draft when it comes to being able to go find a guy that was a center. Most of the guys in this class are seniors as well, so they got a lot of football experience under their belt, including the one from the Florida Gators. Slaughter's a great processor, was elite in pass pro this past season, pretty explosive when it comes to getting out of his stance. He also showcases a lot of force as well. Lower body strength could be improved. Maybe some more patience and some more consistent recovery speed as well are some of his negatives. But I think this is another position where they could definitely benefit from going and finding a player to potentially be slotted into the starting lineup long term, and Slaughter fits that mold as well.
Center is a very valuable position in this draft. There's a lot of really good prospects here, and certainly if you're looking to add a center, this is a good draft to do so. Not necessarily something the Rams need right now, but it's good to have a long-term succession plan. I think Jake Slaughter, who showed over 750 snaps this past year at center, 800 the year prior to that, that he's a true center through and through, and he has been really solid. Good balance of run block and pass block. Gave up one sack last year, one hit, only two QB hurries in 2025. Had eight QB hurries and one sack given up in 2024. So he was pretty consistent, a really strong asset for the Florida Gators. 6'4", 300 pounds. He's smart. He's really good. He certainly is quick off the ball and really solid. Good, has high level football IQ, solid athleticism as well. And I think he can certainly work into key situations. May not be great in some of those one-on-one situations, but overall, I think he's a player that can be really solid, good in sort of a zone scheme fit and fit well into the offensive scheme that the Rams run in LA. Could certainly be a good guy to have for the future in Jake Slaughter.
Now I move to the next slide. They don't have another selection until late in day three, pick 207 in round six. This is a team that has no problem sitting and waiting because they'll find these guys, Nick, late in the draft that are going to end up being superstars. So Les Snead, he's going to be very comfortable. He's probably likely not going to move up unless they really like somebody. So they have four selections here. Skylar Gill Howard at defensive tackle from Texas Tech. Coming off an injury, we only saw a couple of games last season, but this is a guy with a twitchy first step, good mobility, very good interior pass rusher, despite being undersized at 6'1", 290, which is actually very similar size to that of Aaron Donald, who was a superstar, obviously, for a long time. This is a player that has a lot of upside, a resilient player with a nice, strong motor. I think he's going to give some good hustle. I think he makes a lot of sense from them. You also have Patrick Payton at the back part of that seventh round, somebody who I really thought would evolve over his career, but he never did. I mean, this is a very athletic player. He can get his hands up into passing windows, proved to be a really good pass rusher throughout his career. I think he's kind of an underrated cat that they can add to this defensive line that's obviously a very good group. So these two guys, Nick, will make a lot of sense from depth perspectives early on in their careers.
Yeah, I like these picks here. Skylar Gill Howard's a phenomenal player. He's a really good athlete that can do a lot. Obviously, a bit banged up last year, only played 165 snaps over 7 games, but he was really good in 2024, which I certainly will highlight. 5 sacks, 7 hits, 17 QB hurries in about 450 snaps in 2024 for him last year. He did have a sack, 3 hits, and 8 hurries during his limited 7 games. He was pretty solid. Versatile. They move him around a lot, so there's a lot you can do with Skylar Gill Howard. I think he's a really solid prospect and an intriguing prospect. Patrick Payton didn't quite live up to the hype that we were hoping for him. He, bounced around, played at multiple different programs, and ended up at LSU. And we thought he could be a big difference maker for the Tigers. It didn't quite work out for him, and he, had a decent season at times. Had 22 QB hurries last year, a sack, 4 hits. across 600 snaps, but he just wasn't really able to elevate. Plays outside tackle a lot, and I think he certainly lines up better there, and he has a good opportunity to do so. At 6'6", 255, I think the size on him is phenomenal. He's got really good speed. He can certainly hit and get after the quarterback when necessary. He had 4 sacks in 2024, 7 in 2023, while also having 20-plus QB hurries over each of the last 3 seasons. A very solid athlete that's a pretty solid prospect.
And then moving to the offensive side of the ball, they have two guys here in round seven. A multi-year starter in the SEC, and Joshua Braun at guard. Massive frame, 6'6", 340. Pretty thickly built player. Very reliable in pass protection. He can play both guard spots. Good football IQ and toughness. The lack of lateral quickness, pad level inconsistency. And even though he has some power, he really did struggle in the run blocking, at least this past season. Keeping a firm base in space as well. So there's plenty of negatives with him, but I think he's going to be a steal for whichever team drafts him. I just think he has the size, and I think he has the positive traits that could really be inserted into a team's lineup at some point. And he'll be a very respectable player in the NFL. And then they finally go quarterback, Nick. Obviously, we're not really sure what's going to happen with this position. They might even go Ty Simpson at 13 overall. Wouldn't shock me, right? But I think they can wait. Sean McVay can select his guy that he wants. And I think Luke Altmaier makes a lot of sense. This is a good natural thrower of the football. He's got good velocity in the intermediate range, impressive accuracy on tight window throws across the middle, thrives at protecting the football. Not a whole lot of interceptions or fumbles in his career, right? 3 years of starting experience under his belt. Quite confident player as well. He's not top tier in any one category, right? Accuracy and arm is just okay. The velocity, even though it's good, it's not the strongest. He's not the most mobile guy in the class either. But I think Altmaier does a little bit of everything very well, and he's a raw prospect that you can really get a lot out of. And I think this would make a lot of sense for Sean McVay. I could be wrong at the end of the day. It's pure speculation, Nick, but I think they're going to take one in round seven because there's a lot of options here on day three. Will he be a future starter for the Rams? I'm not sure, but I think they're going to take their swing at him.
I'll touch on Altmaier in a second. I'll start with Joshua Braun, who I think is an interesting prospect at guard. Very versatile, right? Played left guard in 2025, played right guard in 2024, played both roles in 2023, although about 80% of his snaps were at right guard, 740 of them. He had about 60 snaps at left guard in 2023, but versatile, right? You can play him in left side, right side. He had 800 plus snaps at right guard in 2024, 800 plus at left guard. He was really solid, certainly had a better year in 2024 than he did in 2025, but the team was also worse in 2025, gave up 3 sacks and 11 hurries compared to 1 and 5 in 2024. But I think Braun's a player that's solid in this late round, in the seventh round at 6'6", 340, a multi-year starter in the SEC, an experienced player at 25 years old. So I think he's not a bad prospect to get. He's a guy that's, again, versatile, and you can certainly do a lot with him. I think in the seventh round, you could do much worse. Luke Altmaier is very interesting. The Rams' future at quarterback is very intriguing. Obviously, Stafford played at an MVP level this year, finished pretty high up in the MVP voting. If he won it, if I'm not mistaken, he had a phenomenal season. Right, he is an incredibly talented player that is still leading the way, having a really good career for the Rams, and clearly he led them into a great position where they were competing for a Super Bowl. But he's getting up there in age. Right, there's certainly no hiding that he's an older player, and they have to kind of figure out a succession plan at some point. I wouldn't be shocked if they took Ty Simpson in the first round, or they trade it back. Maybe they try and take Ty Simpson in the first round. They took Stetson Bennett in the fourth round back in 2023. He has not really progressed or shown any sort of level of ability to be a starter in the future. Altmaier was really good at Illinois. He was solid at Ole Miss as well prior to that, about 3,000 yards passing this past year, 22 touchdowns, 5 picks. And he's certainly got a high football IQ. He's been around the game for a while. It certainly has some physical limitations, but high football IQ, like I said, he's a really solid pocket passer with good field timing and touch. 6'2", 215. I think he's really solid. I think he can certainly be somebody that could make starts and have some solid appearances for a team. I don't know if he's necessarily a guy for the future. I'm still curious to see what the Rams will do to solve their quarterback problems in the future. But Altmaier in the seventh round is certainly worth taking a run at to see if he could be the guy for you in the future.
For today's episode, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.